Has anyone told you recently how magnificent you are? Anybody? Are you glad you are human? Would you go so far to say being human is good news? If it seems like an odd question, it is. I don't think anyone's asked me that question. But one could argue that the answer to this question is revelatory and may be an indicator of whether humanity will survive. Or more directly, whether humans will choose to survive. The question is like an X-ray of the soul. The doctor sits with us and says, there seems to be a dark mass in your soul. We don't know what it is, but we think it is a form of self-hate. You secretly despise being you. Whatever this darkness is, we think it may lead to various forms of self-destruction. So you've heard me say that loving your neighbor as you love yourself is usually bad news for your neighbor. I think we are well aware of our tendency to avoid loving ourselves. It can sound kind of woo-woo. And the Puritan seasoning that is still in our ecclesial spice cabinet is one that makes any serving of self-care taste like selfishness and self-absorption. We have gone so far as to even identify self-care, self-appreciation, self-gratitude, and self-worth as varieties of sin. So, of course, we cannot love our neighbor. Is the same true for humanity? Is it a deeper problem? Not just sometimes a personal issue, but a cultural issue right now. Are you loving humanity? I raised this question for two reasons. Magnificat Humanitas, Pope Leo's first encyclical, translated Magnificent Humanity, was released on Monday. It addresses the Church's social teaching in the context of artificial intelligence, calling for the safeguarding of human dignity amid rapid technological change. It was published on the 135th anniversary of Pope Leo XIII encyclical called Rerum Novarum, marking a deliberate connection to the Church's long tradition of social doctrine. There is a section called What Must Not Be Lost, section 112, if you're interested. More gravely, he goes on to say this, more gravely, the pervasive technocratic paradigm in which we are immersed, and that is amplified by the digital revolution and AI, threatens to normalize an anti-human vision. In that vision, the fullness of life is equated with having more, reducing weakness, eliminating uncertainty, and exerting total control. When efficiency becomes the ultimate measure of value, human beings are tempted to see themselves as a project to be optimized, rather than as persons called into relationship and communion. End quote. Everything we humans feel ambiguous about when it comes to being human, like weakness, uncertainty, loss, fear, anger, our emotional qualities, are actually the nutrients that grow and nurture relationships. The Apostle Paul put it this way in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. And why is he strong? Because in the very act of welcoming his humanity, he opens himself up to God and to all humanity. Our weakness is what invites, inspires, nurtures all of our connections to ourselves, to each other, and to God. Pope Leo beautifully represents the two options we have in two biblical stories. The first one in Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel. You may remember that story. After settling in a plain in the land of Shinar, the people decided to build a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. Fearing being scattered across the earth, they sought to guarantee stability and power for themselves. It was an impressive feat. A single language, a single technology, a single direction. However, the project concealed a profound danger. It was a project conceived without reference to God, supported by a uniformity that eliminated diversity, and also chose homogenization over communion. Babel thus reveals the limits of any effort that, however grandiose, which sacrifices human dignity for efficiency. I wonder how many boardrooms have human dignity on the agenda. What will this do for human dignity? Maybe it's very efficient. But are we building a Tower of Babel? The alternative is in the book of Nehemiah. After the Babylonian exile, a portion of the people returned to Jerusalem, but the city was still in ruins. Nehemiah, before taking action, fasted, prayed, and interceded for the people. He then asked the king for permission to return to Jerusalem, and upon arriving, examine the destroyed areas in silence. He did not impose solutions from above. He convened the families, assigned each of them a section of the wall to rebuild, listened to their concerns, coordinated their efforts, and addressed any opposition. The narrative shows how the city is reborn, not through the initiative of one man, but through the shared responsibility of all. Men, women, priests, artisans, heads of households, and young people all play a part. It is an undertaking with God at the center, which rebuilds relationships before rebuilding with stones. Just imagine that priority list. You're going to go off and build what when all the relationships are broken? Thus, ancient Jerusalem rediscovers a common language, not one of uniformity, but one of communion, namely the harmony that arises when all persons assume their own role and recognize that their strength comes from the Lord. And secondly, oddly enough, number 2 is about 3. It's Trinity Sunday. I will simply say this. The Trinity is a celebration of our humanity. Creator, Redeemer, Sustainer, are all reminders of the dignity of our humanity. We are created. We're supposed to be here. We're inherently important, inherently worth dignity. All humanity is. We are created beings. And the cross and the example of Christ affirms that even when we feel things aren't going well for us, or those we love, or our country, or the world, it's not a punishment. It is an opportunity to discover the presence of God working through all of that. The cross is about God becoming human, not just creating us, but embracing us in all of our humanity and brokenness. And the Spirit is the power and the inspiration and the movement that we have to move through this world in a human fashion, loving, seeking justice, bringing peace and compassion. Let me be clear. This encyclical does not disparage human advancement. It has been, I think, successfully argued that actually faith has inspired the scientific search for truth. And I might add that Trinity Sunday itself is a human innovation. The word Trinity is not found in the Bible. It is an extrapolation. It is a departure into reason and experience. It is evolutionary and revolutionary thinking. It moves us beyond the Scriptures in a way that embraces the intuitive and rational gifts God has given to us. This is not about avoiding our creative or exploratory instincts. It is something that grounds it and sets the tone. And it makes perfect sense coming right after Pentecost, which I always see as the day the training wheels come off. Suddenly the disciples are left kind of like, okay, now what? And what do they do? It's remarkable. If we had time to go through what each of the disciples, what their stories, how they evolved, how the power of their message, how they went throughout the world in different directions, how adventurous they were. They weren't holding any Bible up as they did that because it didn't exist. They were just speaking from the heart. So, the beauty of taking the training wheels off is the empowerment of humanity to get busy. This is not about not moving forward in whatever way we define that. It is about not leaving our humanity behind. And I'm going to quote one more thing from the Pope. I'm not, by the way, becoming Catholic. But I've had this longing for deep dish pizza all week. It's just like Chicago. Isn't it wonderful to have an American Pope speaking to billions of people, and they know he's an American, okay? That's what you call an antidote. So section 120, he says it this way: even when limitations are experienced as inner suffering, human wisdom teaches us not to deny or suppress it, but to integrate it. To eliminate suffering entirely would mean, in the end, extinguishing love and desire as well. Those who love and desire cannot avoid passing through trial and suffering. And over the years, we carry within us lessons that leave their mark like scars. The memories of a journey shaped by freedom and failure, dreams and disappointments. It is only thanks to the interplay of these elements that the wonders of the soul occur within us, allowing us to sense the richness of our humanity. To renounce this adventure, both tragic and splendid, in the name of a presumed transcendence of all limits, could mean many things, but it would no longer be human. In this time, when so many are seeking ways to overcome our humanity, may we have the courage and faith and compassion to embrace our own magnificence, our humanity, and rebuild our cities with relationships that grow from humanity. May we love our neighbors as ourselves. And may that be good news for a change.